What's up, Internet? You're tuning in episode 33 of Nintendo Noise, Flip Screen Games' weekly Nintendo podcast. I'm your host, Pete and Bessie, joined, as always, by my very good friends and co-hosts, Mr. Stephen Radford.
Hello, hello.
Mr. Chewy Plays.
Goodbye, goodbye.
And joining us for the first time on the show from Switch Weekly, Mr. Chris Brandrick.
Hello.
Welcome to the show, Chris. This one's been a long time coming. It's great to finally get you on.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys. Looking forward to it. Diving into what we've got to talk about the survey and stuff.
Yeah. So if you guys don't know Chris, let's do a quick plug of Switch Weekly and talk about the state of the Switch, because that is, of course, your annual Nintendo Switch survey, which we are going to talk all about in our main topic this week.
Yeah. So Switch Weekly, for those who don't know, it's a weekly Nintendo newsletter that I send out like every Sunday, bringing together kind of like the best of Nintendo content from around the web from like the past 7 days. And I also put in like a list of what games are coming out over like the next week and kind of picking out like what I think looks decent, like worth a look at and stuff like that. So yeah, that's the newsletter that goes out every Sunday. And in addition to that, I do like an annual survey, like you just said, kind of checking the pulse, I guess, of like the Nintendo community and what they think of Nintendo's hybrid.
Yeah, and there's a lot of very interesting data points to come from it that we're going to be jumping into a little bit later, like I said. But before that, let me remind you that this episode of Nintendo Noise is brought to you by our Patreon producers for the month of April. They are, of course, Christian Oliveria, Christopher Valenz, Gabriel Hasselmeyer, a.k.a. Asobi, Mary Berry, Smilky Shake, Wakahula, and Zaid Ida. Thank you all so much for your support over on patreon.com/flipscreengames. Y'all are the realest of the real, and we appreciate your support of this fine program. If you want to get links to all the other ways that you can become part of the community, check out our Twitch streams, or, engage with the content in any of the ways that you can on the internet, head over to flipscreen.games. That's our website, and that will be all the shilling for today. So, Chris, I want to start with a question that Steve threw this out to me earlier today, that he wants to start asking guests when they come on the show. What is your favorite Nintendo noise? Right? And not episode of this show, right? But like the Game Boy startup sound, or, like the Mario oof, or, something like that. What's your favorite Nintendo noise?
I mean, Nintendo, it's crazy, isn't it, how many of these things just kind of get stuck in your head. But I think GameCube startup has to be up there. But
can you do your impression of it real quick?
The GameCube one, I'd struggle, but the next one maybe. The Toad like falling off a cliff or whatever in Mario Kart.
Yeah.
That one, it just cracks me up all the time, and that's a pretty good Nintendo noise. Yeah.
So
there's loads. I mean, yeah. What about this one?
Oh,
that's a classic.
It's got the sound effect and everything. That's awesome.
I come prepared.
I'm glad you really did your homework for this one. Which, it's, of course, what would we expect from the man behind the State of the Switch survey, of course, is nothing but meticulous research. So, Steve, since we've never done this before, real quick, what's your favorite Nintendo noise? This is our first time doing it. We've never answered the question.
So what I've got a few, and they're all like related to the handhelds. It's either specifically the Game Boy Advance startup sound, a like higher bit, like the
yeah,
or the DS one when you turn a DS on and it goes that. I loved that, like, and like you saw all the things go on the screen. I always thought that was a really good one as well.
That's a good one. What about you, Chewy?
Oh man, it's a struggle. I think I've always really liked the GameCube little do 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 do.
There you go.
Thing that does, yeah. But the parts that I like about it are specifically like the little subtle thuds that you get in there. Like,
it sounds like a piece of music falling down a flight of stairs. Is the
I like the end bit, the dunt, and it like it just like comes to an end.
Yeah, it's kind of like orchestral almost after hearing it, where it's just like, oh, it's just packed together there. But funny enough, I was also thinking, I was watching a friend streaming Pokemon Legends Arceus just now, and I hate that sound that plays every time you like do the call a Pokemon thing,
Oh,
the weird like
that stupid flute.
thing. I hate it. I hate it.
I
That's the
also
worst
don't
one.
like it.
GameCube's really great. Arceus flute sound terrible.
I think if I had to pick one, it would be the Game Boy startup sound. That's like just such a classic.
Mhm.
And I think in general, I really appreciate a lot of the just the sound design on the Game Boy. Like I think of like the select sound that originated in Pokemon Blue and Red, but they still use it to this day. It's just that little ding, like such a satisfying sound for sure. And I think in general, there's a lot of really good like little Kirby SFX that I like the one
Yeah.
that plays whenever you go through a door and it like does the fade out and it's like that, like it's just good. It's just
Yeah.
satisfying.
And I don't know what it is about like little thud sounds and stuff, but Kirby's got really good thud sounds, like a nice little plop. I don't know. It's weird.
That's a good nickname for Kirby. He's just a nice little plop. Just look at him.
Yeah.
All right. So before we get into the State of the Switch survey, Chris, what are you playing at the moment? What are you playing on your Nintendo Switch?
I am playing Kirby. I picked it up like last week, so I didn't get it on launch. I was trying to hold off on buying it because I got a bit of a backlog. But
I'm sorry for
hold it,
contributing to that. I saw
saw
Chris
you
post
tweet
on
about
Twitter. He was like, "Come on, Chris, you need to get it. It's so good."
yeah. I think I got it on the Sunday and it came out on the Friday, so it didn't last very long. Really, really enjoying it, and it's just like really charming and creative, and it doesn't feel particularly like it's doing a load new, but I mean it's doing a lot new for the Kirby franchise. But in a whole, I'm just finding it to be really just fun, isn't it? It's just a good time. I haven't got very far though. I'm only around 30% of the way through, so I've still got a bit to go yet.
What world are you on? Like, don't say what it is, but like the theme of the levels has been like, have you got to the water world?
I've just got to the desert section, so I'm like
Okay.
4 in. Is that? Yeah. So I'm just at the desert section. Beyond Kirby as well, I've just started playing Earthbound on the Switch Online service. First time I've played it, not played it before, going in completely dark. I've got a friend who's like a complete Earthbound nut who's kind of holding my hand and guiding me through it. But I'm only about an hour in so far, so we'll see how that goes.
How are you getting on with it? Because I'm playing that on stream at the moment, and it's not aged well for me. Like, there's some problematic outfits, and the fact that absolutely everything is in the menu. That you have to click the menu to do anything in that game.
Yeah,
it's just weird.
It does feel a little bit kind of slow, but like I said, I'm only like an hour or so in, so I haven't really gotten to the meat of it yet, so I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
Steve says every game ages poorly, though, so don't take what he says to the bank.
I'll show you one of the outfits. Look up the Sharks from Earthbound when we're not recording, and tell me that is not a problematic outfit.
Okay. I can't comment on it right now.
Steve like Metroid Fusion.
I do like Metroid Fusion.
That did happen.
I loved it. It was great.
Yeah. Well, Steve's a Metroid stan now, so it's like, who knows, right? Like, I can't take anything that he says at face value.
And the whole intention of me not buying Kirby was because I wanted to get a bit more playtime in on Pokemon Legend Arceus, because I bought that, put like 3 hours in, and then just didn't bother with it. And to be honest, I can't see myself going back to it because I just find it quite boring.
Oh my god, thank you. I'm on the same page as you. I got to like the third area and I was just like, why am I still playing this? I don't care about the story. Yeah. It's boring. I just find the fact that I'm running around and catching the same Pokemon over and over and over and over again so dull.
Yeah.
I feel like
a dozen of everything.
For you, Chris, like 2 hours in, I could definitely understand feeling that way. Like, just because like I feel like you're still pretty like in the tutorial-y section of the game.
Sure. Yeah.
It opens up quite a bit after that. So you might find the fun in it after that point, but
yeah, I've heard people say like give it 5 hours, and like if it's not gelling by that point, then you've got kind of a good idea of what it's about.
Yeah.
So I'll do that. I mean, I was kind of keen to revisit the Pokemon franchise because I'd kind of fallen out of love with it. I played a lot of it, like obviously Game Boy Advance sort of era. the times I had gone back to it like recently, I was just like, this hasn't evolved enough for me to take any interest. So I think that Legend's kind of keen to see what, this actually looks like a fresh take on the Pokemon franchise, but I don't know.
It could very well just be that it's not for you, right? In the way that it wasn't for Steve. But I know Chewy and I both really, really enjoyed it a lot. And I mean, that doesn't mean that much coming from me, but Chewy's like a good control, right?
I'm glad that they're finally doing something different, though. At least,
Yeah, absolutely.
Mixing it up.
Well, all right. It sounds like you've got a couple things on the backlog to chip away at. So that's
I'm just kind of dipping into Mario Kart 8, and now there's new tracks and stuff. But
so I guess you're happy that Breath of the Wild 2 got delayed, then, right?
Ouch!
Well, didn't one of you lose a bet there?
Yeah, Steve did. So
yes, I did. Yes, I did. Yeah. Do you know? I just have more faith in Nintendo. That's what it comes down to. Pete and Chewy just like it's never going to happen. So
I mean, you call it.
So what's the over under now on Metroid Prime 4 being this year?
Oh yeah, Steve also predicted that game's coming out this year. So he calls it faith.
We're getting there's no doubt in my mind we're getting a Metroid game this year, whether it's Prime 4, the Prime Metroid Prime remastered. Samus Returns coming onto Switch. One of them's coming.
We might get the Prime trilogy. That might be a thing, but I don't know, man.
Oh no, there's not going to be a trilogy. They'll be charging $60 a piece for each of those, I think.
Well, fair enough.
Yeah, it's
going to be It's going to be a Federation Force port.
Oh God. Haven't Metroid fans endured enough?
What if it's what if it's Other M? They're just like, we heard you really want a new Metroid game. We're just porting over Other M.
That would just be like just true karmic irony, right? Where it's like Metroid fans are like, yes, finally, water in the desert. We got Metroid Dread. And then it's like, oh, great. We heard you like Metroid. We're going to port all the bad Metroid games that we made in between Dread and the last Prime. That's what you want, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, good God. All right, so let's jump into our talking point this week, which is the State of Switch survey for 2022. So this is now the 5th time that you've done this, Chris.
Yep.
I am very interested in. I mean, I love data journalism. I'm such a nerd for this kind of thing, so I love the survey already. But I'm also just very fascinated by like the process of it and the fact that you've been doing it for 5 years and like having a project that you only work on once a year for like this intense period of time. It's like, I think very interesting, just the process of it. So I think the first question I want to start with is why do you do it, right? What motivated you to do it in the first place?
That's a very good question. I ask myself that every year. No, it's really intense. And as the years gone by, it's just kind of grown and grown. Like the number of questions is kind of gargantuan now, to the point where I was like actively trying to slim it down a bit, because there's just so much that you could ask, and it's knowing what to ask that's actually going to provide you some kind of significant insight. But in terms of the original kind of backstory of it, when this Switch was like a year old, it seemed like I don't know, what could I do to kind of mark the anniversary, and just kind of just thought it'd be a neat idea to kind of see what people thought of the Switch kind of after a year of it being available, especially kind of coming off the back of like the dark days of the Wii U. It was kind of a massive turnaround, and everyone was feeling pretty good about things, I think. So just kind of checking the pulse, like I said, of like the Nintendo community at large seemed like a neat thing to do. Obviously since then it's kind of snowballed into what it is now, and it's just an interesting thing to kind of put together each year, and obviously it takes like an appreciable amount of time to do, but I really enjoy putting it together and kind of seeing the trends over time. And I think kind of ultimately, once the Switch's kind of era has come to an end, it'll just be really, really interesting to kind of look back on and have this kind of year by year kind of documentation of like kind of what people's like thoughts and feelings were towards the platform. So that's ultimately why I think I kind of keep doing it.
So because that's, I think, a thing that is so interesting, right? Like the motivation to keep doing it every year, knowing that it's going to be this huge part of it's going to be a huge undertaking. It's going to be this massive project.
Yeah.
And, like, you're already a busy guy.
Yeah.
And then, like, on top of the fact that you're doing the regular, release while you're also juggling this project. But, like, there must be something about it that you like, that motivates you to keep doing it, right, year over year. So what is that motivating factor? Like, what is your favorite part of doing the survey?
I think it's kind of changed over time. I mean, initially it was just kind of doing the write-up and sharing it and seeing kind of the response to it. Like in year 3, I think I got like the most responses ever to it. It was like nearly 17,000 people or something filled it out, which was pretty huge for me at least. So this kind of, it started off just kind of the write-up in itself and kind of the joy of writing it was just interesting to kind of see how perceptions of the company had changed over like the past few years of like the Wii U and stuff. Then it became about, okay, there's actually a significant chunk of people here with an interest in it, and that in itself was kind of a driving factor for it. And now it's, like I said, it's just kind of building a picture of the kind of whole era, So I think that's kind of where I'm at now with it. But I still kind of need to slim it down because it's massive.
As in the slimming down the number of questions. Did you remove any questions from this year? Because I know you added a bunch in, which we'll get to, about like the expansion pack and things like that, which obviously didn't exist last year. What did you take out?
It was kind of like follow-up questions or kind of tweaking certain questions to try and kind of get different responses and things. So like last year I asked, would you typically download a demo on the eShop? And like the vast majority of people said no, they wouldn't. They're not that inclined to just go check it out demo. So this year I asked it a bit differently and said, kind of, have you ever downloaded a demo? Just to try and get like a different data point, really. So just kind of tweaking things like that.
So you've said it takes, and it's funny because you use this phrase in the actual survey, that it takes an appreciable amount of time.
Yeah.
How long is it? Like, what is, like, from the time that the survey goes out to publication, what does that look like? Like, what's the timeline on it?
Okay, so obviously putting the survey together takes, like, I just kind of do that. I start thinking about it early in the year, so that's like January time. It launches kind of early Feb. The survey is generally open for about a month, 3 weeks a month. And then I try and get the survey kind of written up within 2 weeks of the survey closing, just while it's still in people's minds, otherwise it kind of goes off the boil a bit. So yeah, the kind of whole process takes me from like early Jan through to like mid-March. It's always kind of in my mind. But in terms of actually writing the stuff, I took a couple of days off work, so that gives you a good idea.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So before we get into, I guess, like the overall data points, I definitely would love to just ask, like, what of them was either like the most interesting data point or like the one that you were most surprised by, or like any real kind of like stand out data point from this year's survey?
Yeah, there was 2 things. The first was more kind of like a personal kind of bugbear, which kind of was the thing about the whole kind of Bluetooth audio feature. This year I asked people if they've like used it at all, and only like 44% of people said they had. And I think I found that a bit annoying because I personally have been like demanding this feature for years, and I love that it's now here. I mean, I'm wearing my AirPods now, and having that feature on the Switch, I can play with baby sleeping, it's not baby now, but kid sleeping next to me, and not disturb anybody. So it was a
and no
very
silly
much wanted
like cable just like dangling down and plugged in the top and like trying to like figure it out. I also don't have any in-ear headphones that don't have a cable. All like my only in-ear headphones are wireless, and so I'd have to use these like big things, and they're not comfortable to lie in bed with. Whereas I can slot my AirPods in and just play on my Switch in bed. It's awesome. I love it.
I think it's so funny that you brought that up, because I have we have like a document we use every week for the show, but I have my own document with data points that I thought were interesting that I wanted to talk about. And that was one of them. Sure. And literally I pulled that out and I just wrote, like, I put a bullet underneath it and just wrote Steve, because I know Steve was banging the drum for that service. And I was surprised to see that it wasn't more popular. I figured a tech enthusiast crowd, right? You'd think a considerable number of that kind of person has Bluetooth
especially
headphones.
Considering like the people answering this survey generally are the kind of more enthusiast crowd, for sure.
Right? Yeah. So I
do
thought that
wonder
was
though if part of it I do wonder if part of it's because 51% said that they play on TV, and maybe they're
think that's
just
probably
like
it.
Yeah.
not even bothering to use Bluetooth headphones at that point because they're only playing their Switch docked, and they
Yeah.
never even
Yeah,
bothered to
I
play a
think-
handheld.
Yeah, that's probably a pretty clear correlation there that you bang on the money with. I think I was just personally a bit annoyed by it because I've been asking for so long.
Just wait till next year. Everyone that said they really wanted folders this year,
Yeah.
it's like 1% of people have used folders, and they'll be like, right, Nintendo sees your survey, and they say, we're cutting themes, we're axing them. It's not happening now. You didn't use the folders, so you're not getting themes.
It's off topic from the survey, but it's kind of similar with the whole kind of Earthbound thing. People have been banging the drum for years asking for Earthbound. How many people are actually going to play it?
Yeah, I really do wonder that.
I mean, hey,
You,
two out of
probably.
4 people on this panel have already started it, so that's
Yeah.
50% right there.
That's not
Is that a
bad.
big enough sample size though? 4 people? I don't know.
50% of people asked. That's what you got to say.
Exactly.
50% of people asked.
50% of people asked. Yeah. Did I only ask 4? Sure, but you know,
You just got to massage the numbers to tell the story that you want to tell.
you do the Fox News thing where you like show a graph, but like there's no numbers on the side, right? Like it's like, oh, that looks really high.
Yeah.
Have you played,
Go on, sorry.
I was just saying, have you played Earthbound, Chewy?
Not on Switch yet. I did start it a long time ago on the Wii U. I got the Virtual Console version, but I never ended up finishing it. I just played a bit of the intro, and that was about it. So it's definitely a game I want to get back to.
I'm gonna play it
weird
this year.
so far.
I'm definitely gonna play it this year, guaranteed.
And
Take it to the bank.
yeah, I think the other thing that I found kind of like a standout thing for me was the take up for the expansion pack on Switch Online.
Yeah, I was surprised by how
Out of all
unpopular it was.
low it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, out of all the responses, only around 30% of those
Yeah.
responding said that they had signed up for it. Mostly people were saying that the price was too high, and that was the kind of factor that stopped them doing it. And kind of as a follow-up from that, obviously during the survey, as it was running, Nintendo announced the Mario Kart expansion with the 48 new tracks. So I kind of snuck a question into the survey as it was kind of mid-running. So the stats on it obviously aren't as reliable as they could be, but I asked, now this kind of expansion pack thing has been announced for Mario Kart. Does that kind of change your perception towards the value, and would you now consider it? And most still were like, nope, I'm still not interested. So
I found that to be really surprising because, like, I know when it came out, obviously that was kind of the narrative. Was there a lot of people were saying like, "Oh, this isn't worth it," but like with the addition of the Mario Kart DLC, that being one of the most ubiquitous games on Switch, it's like, how is that not worth it at that point, right? Like,
yeah,
that's
If you like fallen out of love with it, or it's not your game, like there are some people who just don't enjoy Mario Kart, and like it's bundled with so many consoles that at this point I feel like everyone's got it.
Yeah, you couldn't really berate people for not being interested in the game that originally came out in, what was it, 2014 or something?
Yeah.
And
when was it? Yeah.
honestly,
years old.
this conversation happened a lot when it initially launched with Animal Crossing too, and a lot of people were like, I could just buy the DLC for 25 and then it's good. Like, I'm done. That's all I have to do. Instead of increasing your price on the online quite a bit, and it's not just a one-time purchase, it's annually, So I think that's a big factor in it. But the thing that also surprised me in the survey was the number of people who are on the family plan, or at least like, I forget how you phrased it, but like, I thought that number would be higher personally, just because like I've been on a family plan since day one of that thing being available with 8 people. So I remember the first year I paid $4.50 or whatever it was for that whole year, and even now, I'm still fine with it because I've upgraded to the expansion pack, and with all 8 people on there, we're all only paying $10 a year, so it's pretty cheap overall. So I'm surprised not as many people have gone that direction. Still,
I was also surprised by how nearly ubiquitous having NSO at all is. Like, there was 90% of the people currently are or have previously been a paying member, right? Which is like
Yeah.
that's kind of insane. Because
Yeah.
again, that feels like a thing where there's been a lot of people who were like, the narrative was it's not worth it, right? Which I've always thought was a little like when it was $20, I was like, really? You don't think like Super Nintendo games are worth $20? Like, okay, you know,
Well, I think it was a lot of that was prior to that, right? It was we had free Switch Online for like a year and a half, 2 years.
Yeah.
And I think we all got a little bit complacent with just being able to play Splatoon 2 or Mario Kart online with friends, and then all of a sudden it's like, yeah, you haven't got that
Kinda
anymore.
pull the
Now you've
rug
got
out
to
from
pay.
underneath you.
Yeah, it's like out of nowhere.
the
It was
tax
seemingly
man's
like,
coming.
here you go, you got to pay
Yeah.
for it now. Like it was good while it
Yeah.
lasted. Oh, and to like
Well, that's-
sweeten the deal, here's some NES games that you really don't care about.
Yeah, that's it. Well, that's kind of what I said in the survey. Is like because of the kind of the online component, it's made it essentially a central component of kind of owning the device. You know, you kind of have to have it. So
Yeah, I mean, as long as you want to play online, but I guess it's funny because I don't think of that because, like, I mean, I have NSO and I have played Switch games online, of course, but like that's not a dominant. Like, I don't know if I didn't have that, I feel like the thing it would actually affect me doing is making content, not so much like actually
playing stuff,
like in
yeah.
my leisure time on Switch. I'm not playing stuff online, like ever. You know. The
Interesting.
online
That's like one of the
experience is-
exclusive. That's like one of the main things I do on it. Is I play Splatoon 2. I play Mario Kart with my
Right.
family. I play Mario Party with my family. Like that is a big driving factor for me to have Switch Online. Is to play online games. That's the number one reason I want it. I could lose all of the emulated games and I would not care. Not one of them. I don't care about paying a subscription for.
Steve's in the
I'd rather pay like
9%.
I'd rather pay like $4.99. Honestly, no, I'd rather pay like $4.99 for Earthbound and let me buy it and keep it forever rather than having to keep paying you. I think another large factor of the Switch Online thing, right? It was the number one reason was price, but they made you pay it all up front for the expansion pack. Whether you bought a family plan or you bought
that's
it
true.
individually, you had to stump up all of the cash in one hit. Whereas I'd love to know. I don't know if you asked the question, like how many people spread the cost monthly with their subscriptions versus pay it all in one hit.
Yeah, it was I think I had that one pulled out. Yes, it was. So there are just under 60 people who have an active subscription are on the annual plan. So 57.4% of people do it annually, and then other people take advantage of the monthly, which is another thing I was really surprised by, because it's like the annual is $20. Right? Like it's not that much money. Yeah. And I mean, like it's more if you're doing the expansion, but as we just established, most people have not done that, right? So
yeah.
But also not a lot of people have the expansion pack comparatively. Whereas like almost everybody has NSO. So the idea of that people are like doing the monthly even though it costs more, it being $20, I was surprised by. You know, I was like, "Oh, really? Wow!"
I always did it. Like I know it cost me more, but I always did it because it was I like the flexibility of I'm not playing anything on Switch at the moment. In the same way that I do the same thing with PlayStation Plus, it's like I'm not playing anything on PlayStation at the moment.
And we've talked about that too.
Like cancel it.
I think that's insane because I'm like, I can't imagine being on top of it that much, right? Where I think if I was on the monthly, I would just be paying for it monthly and spending more money and forgetting to turn it off and turn it back on, and then being like, I want to play Splatoon 2. Oh, I don't have it right now. I won't play it. I'll play something else.
It's interesting because I don't do that at all with like any of my gaming stuff, like Switch Online and like Xbox Game Pass. I just let it roll. But with like streaming services, I am always juggling them. Like I've just cancelled Netflix today because I know I'm not going to watch anything for a month, or you know, I've got like 3 or 4 streaming services that I always constantly juggle because I'm like, I don't need to pay for all of these all the time.
Yeah, it's like do you need
watch
Netflix, Amazon, Apple TV? You know, there's just the Disney Plus. It just all adds up. You know, if you've got BritBox, if you're paying for a TV license, if you've got cable, it's just like how much media can one person consume? You add all of your gaming stuff into that as well. It's a lot of people do like pick and choose between them. I imagine that's why people pick the monthly plans.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's just because I'm just the kind of person I am. I'm just like, I can't, like, I don't know, dude. I'm not organized enough to be doing that. Like,
and you got to think that it must have factored into Nintendo's decision to force everyone to pay up front. Like that must have been a reason why they must have seen people dropping in and out of subscriptions all the time, and especially with like the N64 games or with Animal Crossing. Like you could pay for a month, play what you wanted of the Animal Crossing DLC, cancel it. You could
Yeah.
pay for a month, play through the one N64 game you wanted to play, and then cancel it. And they don't want people doing that.
Yeah, I think that's what it more kind of boils down to is the kind of DLC side of stuff. They don't want you getting that DLC value on a monthly.
Yeah, and from what at least the experience with Animal Crossing, it's like once you get it, like even if you cancel it, you still have a lot of that stuff benefiting your game. So it doesn't just instantly disappear like a lot of other subscription-based things will do. So that's a challenge there for sure. Somebody made a really good point, and you wrote up a lot of comments that people made. And my favorite one was like, oh yeah, this seems like an obvious little thing to do, but somebody was just like, why can't there just be a really budget-friendly plan that's just the online and cloud saves? And I was like, yeah, why isn't there? Like, so a lot of people don't really care about the retro things, and they could just benefit from getting that. So
I'm sorry, Chewy. 91% of the people said they played the retro stuff. So I don't know where this narrative comes from. You know, everyone's like, nobody cares about these games. Maybe not the NES, but they're playing Super Nintendo games. They're spending tens of hours with them. Okay.
Fair, but that's like that's a pool of people who have bought. They've
already bought it, they've already
bought it.
And you kind of feel like you have to play it.
Yeah, there's basically no other choice. They're like holding a gun to your head and saying, you have to play these now. You bought them.
I think the alternative is they just offer cloud saves and online play for free, right? Otherwise, you end up with loads of tiers like that new confusing PS Plus stuff. I don't know.
Yeah. Do you want Nintendo Switch Online, Nintendo Switch Online Plus, Nintendo Switch Online Deluxe Plus? I don't know. You know,
new Nintendo Switch Online.
Yeah, it would be that way, wouldn't it?
Oh my God. Yeah, new. It's like, stop, please.
That's what they called it, the all new PlayStation Plus. They'd just be taking it from PlayStation. So, you know, it's right there for them to take.
All new Nintendo Switch Online. So one of the ones that I thought was really interesting, you started the survey off talking about the OLED Switch, which obviously, right, big news in the Switch world, obviously getting this new hardware SKU. The first data point that really stuck out to me is like one of the first ones you offer, which is the thing about how the OLED Switch is higher than the Lite, which I thought was really interesting considering, and you called this out, it had only been on the market for 5 months, but when the survey...
Compared to like the Lite was like 30 months.
30? Yeah, it's like, wow, holy crap. Like,
is that what I said? That sounds too high. I don't know.
No, you're right. Yeah, 30 months.
Yeah, was it? Right, okay.
And I mean, which is, again, I think like there's probably... The group that you're surveying, right, is like
skewed. They probably didn't buy a Switch because they already had a Switch, whereas 90% of the people that bought the Switch OLED already had a Switch already and they upgraded, and like 10% of them it was their first Switch, which I thought was also crazy. But I guess it makes sense because they're the people subscribing to Switch Weekly. They're the ones that are like the diehard fans and probably were the ones last year saying that hardware revision was the main reason they weren't buying another Switch at this point, whereas that's shifted this year to price because the OLED's catered for that.
That kind of person is so baffling to me. Like in no shape.
Like you've held out all this time. And
like 5 years in, you're like, there we go, the OLED Switch. That's what I was waiting for. It's like, it's basically the same. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's better. I love my OLED.
They just wanted a white console. That's what it was.
I guess.
The majority of people bought the white one.
They're like, that white one looks pretty hot though, right? Like, okay, I guess now
everyone just wants the new hotness. Yeah,
time to bite. That's wild to me. And also, it's insane to me that person, right, is like, okay, my first Switch is an OLED Switch, and then they also took part in your survey this year? Like, it's just like, so you just got it and you're all in now, right? You're like, oh, let me get on. I'm getting this newsletter. I got to find out all the Switch news I missed out on for 5 years.
I mean, seriously, I'm not surprised. I feel like that's like... You know, they waited out this long, and now finally they get to enjoy kind of a lot that happened.
Yeah. Honestly, that's what I did with the Vita, but the Vita was like a weird, obscure thing I bought on sale once on like Amazon Prime Day. The Switch is like a very popular and successful console.
Yeah, I mean, it's a mature platform now, and if you're buying in now, let's be honest, you're getting like really good experience. Like,
my
because
God,
obviously
yeah.
the OLED is the best Switch you can get, and like the library of games is insane. So yeah, I get it.
Yeah, I mean, I often think about how different life would be if I was that kind of gamer, where it's like, yeah, I don't care, I'll get a Switch 5 years late and get like a blockbuster list of like 10 games that just absolutely slap, that are all brand new to you, right? And you can get them all
Yeah,
on the
your
cheap.
wallet would be crying. Yeah,
That's true. Actually, I think about that. You won't get them on the cheap. You're still spending $60 on Breath of the Wild
yeah,
years later.
that's
And
true.
I don't know how Nintendo pulls it off, but they do.
Yeah.
So, another one that I thought was really interesting was the bit about like how many games people owned on the Switch, where you had
It's crazy high.
800.
I was amazed.
800 or there were 800 respondents who said they had over 100 games on the Switch, and last year only 400 said that, which I thought was really interesting. I was like, how many of the like that's a huge jump to double the number in a year?
Yeah. It's weird because like I had to change the way that the kind of I reported on this question, because the averages were just kept going up and up and up to like insane numbers, and like the average this year was like 63 games owned, which is like, that's kind of insane. So yeah, looking at the median, it kind of makes it a bit more sensible, and it comes in at around 35 games, which I think kind of, when you can take into consideration the size of like the digital library that's available on the Switch, seems believable.
I think so. I think that's probably where I'm probably a little bit higher than that, but I do a podcast every week about Nintendo, so I would imagine so.
Exactly. Yeah.
Chewie's probably way, way, way higher than that, because he had to buy a 1 terabyte SD card in order to fit everything on.
I did make that. I just looked
insane.
through, and as far as apps go on my Switch, it's like 150 now, like on the dot.
Okay.
But some of those are like demos, Hulu,
Yeah.
just some extra things. But I mean, that's still a lot of things to have in one place.
Yeah, well, and you offered this kind of like context for the data in the survey, Chris, where you were saying like it's pretty encouraging to see that like it's been rising consistently year over year, and that like the audience is clearly still very engaged, right? Like,
yeah, there's no like fatigue with the platform or anything. Yeah.
Yeah, and like when you look back on the Wii, right? Like polar opposite, right? I remember the last couple years of the Wii's life cycle, it was just like, man, like nothing's coming out on this thing, huh? Right? Like it's like I was using it for Smash and that's about it. Virtual console.
Yeah, I think the story with the Wii is so wildly different. It's weird, isn't it? Because of the whole kind of blue ocean strategy. A lot of people just bought it for Wii Sports, Wii Fit, Mario Kart, and that was it. So, yeah.
And it's kind of funny because like I feel like I remember feeling kind of similar about like Breath of the Wild was that machine for a lot, or that game for a lot of people, where it was like, oh, it's a Zelda machine.
Right.
And that's all I'm buying it for.
Sure.
But then the hits kept coming. Right. And like,
yeah,
we got Mario Odyssey that same year. I would imagine a bunch of those people also bought that game. Like, I can understand Splatoon 2 and maybe Mario Kart not being for you, but that first year was a slam dunk as far as I'm concerned. I think that goes down as probably one of the greatest console launch lineups in history, even though it's like not really a launch lineup, it's like a launch window of the year. It's phenomenal.
I maintain that still that year is a really strong contender for best year in video games, right? If we ever that's a conversation for another podcast, but I mean, yeah, 2017, what a year.
Pretty strong.
So something that I thought was pretty interesting too, and I guess again this kind of makes sense with like the whole enthusiast crowd thing, was like the physical digital split, right? And that it was like 53% of people were mostly buying digital. I'm kind of surprised by that, because you make the point of how much of the Switch's available library is digital, so that like means people are kind of going out of their way to buy physical games.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, it's probably because of the enthusiast crowd, but I always expected this question to, over the years, slowly, gradually kind of push up in favor of digital, and it hasn't happened. Like year on year, it's been pretty consistent 50-50. Always kind of surprised by it, but like you say, it's probably just kind of the people who are buying these games and answering this survey. But yeah, like most of the games on Switch are digital only, so I don't know.
What are you? Because obviously you bought Kirby physically. Are you usually a physical purchaser?
For like full price games, yeah. If
Me
it's
too.
just on like the eShop and it's under like $20, then I'll do it on the eShop. But anything beyond that, I'll probably get physical and then like just sell it on if I'm not into it, or
So
like
you
Pokemon
do
Legends Arceus,
trade them in.
that's getting sold.
Mhm.
Yeah, like
So then there was getting into the section about like the Nintendo published games that folks have picked up and like kind of looking at some of the recent releases. I was pretty surprised to see Pokemon already having that 39% attachment rate is pretty surprising. I mean, I guess not. I think the fact
that I think it just comes down to them kind of mixing up the formula, you know. I mean, and kind of the fact that did I actually share it in here? Yeah, Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl kind of comparatively, Pokemon Legends Arceus kind of blew them out of the water so quickly. But I think it is because people knew it was coming, people knew it was different, so people jumped on it, myself included.
I also think people just didn't like the chibi style of Diamond and Pearl.
Yeah, a lot of people definitely were not into
their
it.
feet. It ruined it.
Yeah, I remember the feet.
I had a question in terms of that. Were there any like games that surprised you in terms of retention in 2021? Like, were there any that were lower than you thought would be or higher than you thought?
Mario Party always kind of surprises me in how high it is. I don't know why. I think I have this kind of love-hate relationship with Mario Party, so kind of like a personal kind of thing. Like why is this doing so well? Because
I was going to say, don't you come around here and badmouth Mario Party. We're Mario Party stands around this podcast.
I played Mario Party's, what's the new one called? Superstars? Yeah.
Superstars.
Yeah. I played that recently online, and the mini games are so much fun, but the board game stuff bores me to death.
You got to play with Pete and and team up with someone and just plan to steal all Pete's stars because it's hilarious. It makes the game so much more fun.
Or Chris,
when you can team up with Pete.
Or Chris, you come on and you team up with me and you fight against these fucking jackals on this podcast who are always nipping at my heels.
I'm up for that.
All right, I'm gonna hold you to that, buddy.
Yeah, do it. I've got this friend who's like, "Oh yeah, let's turn it up to like 50 turns." Like,
no, please.
No, 50. No way. No,
that's too much.
Yeah. So I'm always like, let's just go to Minigame Mountain. I mean, that's where it is. So yeah, I'm always kind of surprised that those games seem to do as well as they do. People like Mario Party. I don't know. Beyond that, I was kind of seeing WarioWare not do so well. It was kind of surprising. But
and I think it's Mario Party's fault because I didn't pick up WarioWare because of Mario Party.
Yeah,
I will say, like, I bought WarioWare because I traditionally loved the WarioWare series, but this one didn't really grab me.
You got to get to the Wario cut. That's where it's at.
Yeah,
I put like 30 hours in that alone, just competing with a friend, trying to get the high score.
Okay. Yeah. Beyond that, no, nothing really. I mean, seeing that Game Builder Garage at only like 10%, that's kind of expected, to be honest. It's kind of hard to get into, kind of hard to market, I imagine.
They didn't advertise that anywhere. We got to the point where last year we even forgot that they'd released that game. When I was saying to Pete at the end of the year, because I was like, Nintendo's going to release a new franchise or whatever. I was like, they've released Game Builder Garage, and Pete was like, what? I was like, I forgot that game existed.
It's like, oh right, that game that I saw somebody remake Earthbound in, and then I never ever saw it again. It never crept up on my Twitter timeline even one more time. Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of what jumped out at me.
Yeah, and I speaking on in terms of like, I guess, games that had like a really impressive attach rate, like shout out to Metroid Dread, 50%.
Oh yeah. I was so happy to see that.
Fucking right. That's goddamn phenomenal. Right it was. Yeah, that game rules. And I say that as someone who has never ever liked a Metroid before now.
Wow.
Yeah. So I shout out to Metroid Dread, Game of the Year 2021. Jesus Christ, the years, they bleed together.
I mean, someone actually said that in the survey. It's like, I was like, oh, what game did you play the most in 2021? They're like, I don't know, what year is it? Is it 2020, 2021?
They're like, I don't know, I think it's Animal Crossing, but whatever, right? Like, time's meaningless now.
Yeah. Oh, here we go. Yeah, I got it. Yeah. I honestly have no idea. Let's say Animal Crossing. That was probably more a 2020 thing than a 2021. Those 2 years tend to blend together for me, as I suspect they do for a lot of people.
They
For sure.
do. That game though will always just remind me of the beginning of lockdown. I remember getting that. It was like a week. It was like that first week of lockdown, and we were just all playing Animal Crossing.
Yeah,
that was it.
that was like the cute, like, oh, this will be over someday. Like, we're all watching Tiger King and playing.
It's like,
Animal
while we're
Crossing.
doing this, we can meet up on islands and have
Yeah.
fun, and it'll be really great and awesome. And then it just carried on forever. But while we're talking about games, I'm like the missing franchises section was so interesting to me, because I'm the person who's just like, why the hell do we need F-Zero on the Switch when we've got Mario Kart?
People who love F-Zero
really,
really love F-Zero.
I know.
And you know what?
Apparently Chris's one.
I like F-Zero. Like
yeah.
What, it's F-Zero X, I think, is the Super
GX
Nintendo one?
The
GameCube.
N64
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, and
I liked the
Wait,
GameCube
have you played
one.
Have you played F-Zero GX? You have, okay, right.
Mm-hmm.
I've never played
I
GX.
did like it, but they added the F-Zero levels to Mario Kart 8 Deluxe.
They added one.
This fills the
I
spot for
think
me.
that
It's fast enough.
comparable?
It's not the same thing.
I
Steve.
do like that style of game though. I always like Wipeout on the PlayStation as well. I could see it coming back, but what was the knockoff that came out that first year that was a Wii U port?
Fast RMX.
Fast RMX.
Yeah.
I played that. It was good enough. I don't really need a full-on
The thing that's a
F-Zero.
shame is I think
is
that's
with-
what they should do with F-Zero, is not try to bring it back as like a AAA, like let's make it a full 3D $60. Like, I think it would thrive as like a more like let's make it a more
open
retro.
world.
I-
Go open world.
I can tell you exactly what they need to do with it, right?
Hit us.
Because they always bang on about, oh, we don't know what to do with this franchise. We need to do something that feels fresh. Well, I mean, do a battle royale, do Death Race, but there's 99 cars on the track, and you got to knock people out. It'd be
It's
amazing.
just Twisted Metal. I'm in.
That would be
I'm
really good.
in.
That would be really
sounds
good.
great. Are you kidding me?
And then you tie it in, and it's an expansion pack only game, and then that makes
Okay,
everyone
see?
have to pay for the year. Done. See?
I'm sold.
Yeah,
F-Zero 99. There you go.
it'd be great.
Oh,
So
fuck.
good.
Yeah, you're right. Oh, my God. That would be awesome. I'm in. I'm in. That sounds great.
So yeah, I mean, like you said, like in terms of what like games people wanted to see on the Switch, Metroid was the top spot last year. Obviously, that's kind of dropped completely out of the top 5 now. So people are satisfied with Metroid Dread. So
You said Metroid Prime was
It's
still a
great.
common answer, though, right?
yeah, Metroid Prime 4 like got so many responses, but who knows when that's happening?
I feel like the top 5 is literally just the top 5 franchises that Nintendo own that haven't shown up on Switch at this point. Like, that's it. There's like not really any others. And Persona being the number 1 spot for third party, I think is
third-party
just
stuff.
like, come on, seriously. At this point, I'm convinced they've got like an exclusivity agreement that no one knows about. And that's the only reason it's not come to Switch.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think it's not exactly a secret, right? Like Sony's pretty involved in Persona. But I thought it was funny because I actually screenshotted the bar graph for my notes because there's 443 for Persona, and then the next highest one is under 200. It's like people like Persona's the one. It's clearly Persona. Like everything else is like, yeah, I guess this would be cool, but to take it back to the Nintendo stuff, it was F-Zero, Star Fox, Earthbound, Golden Sun, and Kid Icarus. Obviously, Earthbound. You know, indirectly
Sort of happened.
Yeah, right. So like, it'll probably still be around because I feel like people still want like a new one.
They want that remaster.
Yeah, I mean,
we want like the Grezzo treatment on that, I think, at this point. We want Mother 3.
I want Grezzo to make a Mother collection so bad.
And it's the same sort of point actually with F-Zero, because F-Zero X on the N64 NSO stuff dropped during the survey as it was taking place. So,
but Star Fox, I mean, I guess that's also like Star Fox 64, but like, I'm surprised that's not number 1 because like I feel like everybody wants a good modern Star Fox and just nobody at Nintendo seems to agree what that looks like.
No, I think what that kind of speaks to though is that like you said, like there's these games now are like it's just what hasn't turned up on the Switch yet. We've for the most part we've had it pretty good like in terms of what franchises have come to the Switch, and it's kind of like slim pickings left on what there is. So. It's a nice problem to have, I guess.
Yeah, and the only other one that I thought was like kind of because the other two are Golden Sun and Kid Icarus, right? Obviously beloved, especially among like the hardcore, right? So makes sense. I was kind of surprised that Donkey Kong was in the honorable mention section and not even in the top 5.
Yeah.
I feel like it's because people see that like Tropical Freeze came over, like he has had a game. We have had some Donkey Kong representation,
Yeah,
whereas
that's like an old
these
game.
games we haven't had anything made since like GameCube era, really. Not anything decent anyway. So it's just like, come on, it's been like 25 years at this point. Or I guess is it 30 years this year?
We had
GameCube
Wario
or
Land,
something
Steve.
ridiculous.
Wario Land got some love.
Wario Land, yeah. Wario Land needs to come back. Or a good Wario World. I'll take that as well. But yeah, we do need that. I was amazed how many people say Call of Duty as well. I just can't ever see myself playing Call of Duty on a Nintendo console at all.
I feel like I could definitely see Warzone on Switch.
Yeah, I think that's the one that's coming.
Yeah.
At this point.
I think out of the top 5, that's like definitely a lock-in for this year, I think.
Yeah.
I'd love Fallout though. That's a high up for me. I would have loved to have played New Vegas on.
Port New Vegas. Yeah, like what are they doing? They put Skyrim on, just put New Vegas on. Why not?
Oh yeah, and then shout out to the 8 people who joined me in asking for Beautiful Joe.
Shout out to Beautiful Joe, right? Like, come on, get a remaster collection for that franchise. You know,
So great.
people love Beautiful Joe. Not a lot of people, but we're out here. We exist.
Oh no, clearly.
I'm with you. So then the other thing that we had was the list of games that people wanted to see come to NSO, and obviously again Earthbound topping that list and then binning that off because hey, guess what, we got it. But a couple other honorable mentions I think again are all games that are definitely ones that you would expect to see. It's Chrono Trigger, Super Mario RPG, GoldenEye, Pokemon Stadium, Donkey Kong 64, Banjo-Tooie, Conker's Bad Fur Day.
We ain't getting Chrono Trigger, not a chance. That'll be a paid for port by Square. Look what they did with all the Final Fantasy stuff.
They will never port that game well for some reason. No, they won't. They refuse to. They're just like, we'll sell you the mobile version.
It'll be here's the one with the dodgy font that no one likes. Here's the one with the weird aspect ratio. Here's the one that's like slightly blurry because we scaled it wrong.
Here, you want the PlayStation port where all the fights have like a 5-second load time? Like, it's awesome. It's great. It's like, just port the DS version. What are you doing to me?
They can't do that because then it wouldn't be below their not meet their expectations, and that's their favorite catchphrase at the moment over at Square.
Yeah, I was definitely not surprised by that list. That definitely felt very, very appropriate, you know?
I'm surprised. Do we know? I guess we know that a lot of the Microsoft stuff's coming out, like the stuff that they own, like GoldenEye. I think we're pretty convinced that that's coming at this point.
Seems to be a lot of smoke there, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know. Well, I don't know. I guess it could be that, but it could also just be like a paid port thing as well, which seems
because that's a really difficult one with the licensing issues with James Bond itself.
Yeah, I can't imagine that just dropping on NSO.
Right.
Yeah.
I feel like it's way more likely that they would do like a GoldenEye remaster type thing where it's like, hey,
here it is in 1080p kind of thing.
Yeah, it's the same game, only it's a little smoother, you know?
Yeah,
and you can use twin sticks, and you don't have to be inverted all the time. It'll be great.
Yeah, that'd be huge.
I think if they made a version of that game that was playable, like with like modern controls, I really do think that could have a moment, right? Because like,
with the slap mode, imagine everyone doing that on Twitch.
Try to go back to that game is like, it's like brain melting.
Oh god,
it's not fun.
You aim, you like hold the button, and it's like, okay, down is up, and you like go to do it, and like it's like this red dot going, and it's like, I can't do it.
And you do the whole thing where it's like, oh, like you need to use the C sticks to like turn your body. It's just like, oh my god, like, or the buttons. It's like, what the hell am I doing? Like, yeah, you're just moving like. Yeah. It's like it reminds me of the way that like if you ever watch like any of the older Batman movies, right, where like the cowl is like one piece, so he can't turn his neck.
Can't move his neck.
So he just has to move his whole torso at the same time.
I've never seen that. I need to see that.
Oh, you need to. Classic. So good.
Just Google Batman can't move his neck. You'll find a video. Like, it's very funny.
Yeah, that is one game that has not aged well. I'll give you that.
Yeah, and like no disrespect. I loved it at the time. It was revolutionary, but like talk about control schemes that have not aged well. Like try to play that thing on an N64 controller. It's like hell.
Yeah, especially if you're playing it on like a 25-year-old N64 controller, which is going to have.
Oh my god, yeah, and it's like loose as anything. Because we've all ruined them from that Mario Party game.
I should have. Yeah, mine's in a box right now, but I would just wiggle it, and you can see that stick just dangling.
That's what you need, isn't it? I mean, look at that.
It's a nice one.
Perfect.
Yeah, that's
goddamn. Making all kinds of Nintendo ASMR on this episode.
That's a good Nintendo noise.
Yeah,
that is a good Nintendo noise. I'll give you. You know what, Steve? You know what's another one I like is this the
clamshell shot.
The snap.
Yeah, that's good.
Little.
Yeah, talking of which, the Switch controllers going in, the click they made, that's good.
Yeah, that
iconic.
Click noise.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
iconic.
So satisfying, yeah.
That click. Are you kidding me? Love it. So speaking on the NSO stuff, one of the questions was about what library of games people would like to see come to the service next. I think unsurprisingly, GameCube won. Personally,
you want Game Boy.
I'm aligned with the second place winners, the Game Boys. I guess it's technically the third because GBA was second, and I want Game Boy and Game Boy Color first.
Right.
And the lad Pokemon 3 years in.
God damn it, you're right. So, I mean, I think that's pretty predictable, but the other ones that were on the list I thought were pretty interesting. Dreamcast?
Yeah,
ranking up there real highly.
To happen. Can you imagine Shenmue on the go? Crazy
Forget
Taxi.
Shenmue, you need Seaman. Seaman, Steve.
Oh, not Seaman. No, get out of here, Seaman.
We gotta have the...
Just give me...
the incredible
Jet Set Radio and Crazy Taxi. I'll be happy.
Jet Set Radio is so good. So good. Jet Set Radio... Crazy Taxi, is it like Choo Choo Rocket? That was always good.
Yeah.
Choo Choo Rocket's great.
Yeah. Soul Calibur.
Station 5, Soul Calibur. There's so many good games just on the Dreamcast that just died there.
And again, who could forget Seaman? The revolutionary life sim game. And then we had Wii, PS1, keep dreaming, folks.
Yeah.
Sega Saturn. Come on. For what games? What games you want from the
Panzer Dragoon Saga, that's all they want, but it's already on the eShop, so just go play that.
5 fucking games that ever came out for the Sega Saturn before they threw in the towel. Come on, guys.
Where's the Sega 32X on here? Why is that not there? Or Sega CD?
No,
let's get like the real hardcore ones in.
Yeah, at least Sonic CD's a game that you've heard of. Like that, I don't know. But you also called out that there were a handful of people who requested to see Game Pass on the service. I was kind of surprised that wasn't higher.
Yeah, I think it's maybe because the way I phrased the kind of question in terms of like what library of a consoles game would you like to see come to the thing.
True.
So it kind of led people down a certain path. But yeah, people did ask for Game Pass, and it kind of falls into the kind of services kind of angle, doesn't it? I mean, I've asked in the past about, do you want more kind of Netflix, Hulu type apps on the system? And I don't think I asked that this year, but it kind of falls into that bucket, I guess. It's like a service, isn't it?
Yeah, I wonder. Maybe that's one to ask about next year.
Yeah.
But kind of on that, in that same vein, you also asked a question about the Steam Deck, and I thought that was very interesting because it was only 9.7% had said that they had pre-ordered or bought a Steam Deck, which seemed kind of small. I figured that there would be more, again, because one of the things that you asked was about other platforms that they owned, which I was also kind of surprised by because there was kind of a surprisingly small number of like PlayStation, Xbox owners, I thought, compared to how many people had a PC. So I was like, oh, it's all these PC folks. You'd think they'd be chomping at the bit for the Steam Deck thing, no?
Yeah, maybe. I think the Steam Deck story, it'll be much more interesting to kind of see that one next year because I think it's too early, to be honest. I mean, with it not even being out yet, most people can't even get hold of one. I think it's just a thing that's just too early to tell. So I wanted to ask it just to kind of get a comparative kind of data point for next year, but yeah.
I think it's super interesting.
And it's kind of like PS5. It's still a little bit too early for people to have that one. It's no way.
Yeah, way
exactly.
too early for them to have that one. It's only been out like 18 months and they still can't make enough. But no, I think the Steam Deck's really interesting because you made the point it is a very similar form factor, even though it's a very different device.
Yeah.
If people are using their consoles like 50% of the time for handheld, which seems to be the case in the survey, around 50-50 split, makes sense.
Yeah.
People would want to play those larger games that aren't available on Switch, like the Elden Rings at this point, on a Steam Deck, on a handheld device.
Yeah, you think that the kind of setup of the system would kind of be compelling to those users because they're so comfortable with using the Switch in handheld mode that it would be kind of an easy translation for them to get the Steam Deck. It's kind of the same thing but beefier. But I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know, maybe it is like as simple as like the fact that I also kind of can't understand why people are like, oh, I don't want to buy games on the Epic Game Store. I want all my games on Steam. And it's like maybe they just don't want to have two devices and they're already engaged with the Switch and,
If they've got PC though, presumably they're playing games on PC if that's what they're saying in the survey. Like,
right.
I would imagine they've got some games in a Steam library because that's like the de facto standard for PC at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a weird one. It's also a very expensive console. It's like the mid-range model is like almost $600. It's like that's a lot of money to spend on a handheld.
I guess it was also like to Chris's point, it was unproven, right? Like now it's like it's out and people are like, oh, it's good. So I bet there are more people who are like, oh, I want one now than there were, a few months
last
ago.
July, yeah,
or even like when the survey started, right? Like near to the beginning of the year before like reviews had circulated and everything. Because I mean, the reviews for it only started coming out,
25th of February was the.
It was
the day,
during the survey, yeah. I don't know about you, but like my Twitter feed just seems to be completely bereft of any conversation about the Steam Deck.
I just said this to Steve.
Quiet.
Yeah, I was like, are people like are
No
there just
one-
not
no one's
enough of
talking
them
about this thing.
out in the wild or what? Yeah.
I don't think anyone's got one. I
Think
think that's the problem. Like they said on Twitter this week that they're ramping up the fact that the number they're sending out to people. They're sending out 2 emails a week to like request people to buy them. And like, I had someone come into a Twitch stream earlier, and they were saying in chat like, I got my Steam Deck email yesterday, but I can't decide if I want to buy it or not. And I'm like, are you crazy? Like I'm dying to buy one. Send your email my way, and I'll buy it.
Yeah. I don't know if it's just like, are they like a victim of the kind of like the whole kind of chip shortages and stuff and things like that, and they're just struggling to ramp up production because it's a shame, isn't it, that you got this moment where you want to launch it and have this big hurrah, you got Gabe Newell knocking on your door and stuff, and then you can't capitalize on that. But we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, shoot, right? Like, look across the fence, right? Like that's how PlayStation and Xbox are feeling, right? Like both of these consoles are breaking sales records. Even though they can't keep them on shelves. It's like, imagine if there were as many PlayStation 5s and Xbox Series X's in the wild as people wanted. They would probably be trouncing sales records, right? Like there's that rumor going around that the Series X is on pace with the 360, which sold incredibly well, right? Like, so, I mean, it's interesting to see, right? I mean, we talk all the time about, if consoles are still here to stay, right? And everybody seems to be thinking we're moving towards, the cloud and all that stuff. And you look at the data in your survey, and I don't know, people like their physical games, people like their consoles. I don't think we're nearly as close to that as people like to think. I really don't.
No, I think we're a good 5-10 years away before it's even gets to a kind of a significant point in terms of penetration for sure.
Yeah, until the point where it's even actually viable.
Infrastructure is the problem for it. Yeah, for sure.
I'm curious when Nintendo goes for their streaming play at this point, because we've obviously seen Xbox, they did theirs very publicly with Game Pass Ultimate. We've seen Stadia, which kind of fell flat on its face. Amazon's doing their thing. We've just had PlayStation really ramping their setup up, merging PlayStation Now with PlayStation Plus and having that extra tier on there. Does Nintendo do that at some point? Do we see them? Maybe that's a solution for some of the games they don't want to port over or can't port over. Maybe they become like a streamable game that you just play. Obviously, we've got streaming on there with games like Control and things like that. But I'd be interested to see if Nintendo get into the streaming play at some point as well.
I think it
kind of feels like they're going to be kicking and screaming into it. I don't know.
Yeah. I think expecting anything else is hoping for too much from them. Right, I mean, let's be 100% real, right? They are still doing peer-to-peer for online. They don't even have basic online functionality that Xbox established, what, in 2005 was when Xbox Live launched, right? I mean...
Oh, no, Xbox Live launched way before that. 2005 was the 360
Oh, no, yeah,
launch.
you're right. No, it would have been like
it was like 2001.
2001, 2? Yeah, like
2003, I want to say. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It's somewhere in that range. So, I mean, we're
it's been 20 years, yeah.
Right? Like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Was when we established what online gaming on consoles looks like, and Nintendo was nowhere near.
Nintendo still got friend codes.
Yeah.
And I feel like they're doing all of these things kind of in whatever their Nintendo way is now. Because I don't know, some of their actions lately have been making me feel like maybe they're starting to implement stuff that's we're going to see down the line. All of the new like icon things, the way they're integrating the mission and rewards into the Switch Online program and stuff. I'm like, okay, is this achievements? Are these the prizes we're expecting in your online infrastructure going forward? Is this, or are you just gonna like, I don't know, start over with the next console and do it all over again? Where you're like, all right, here's free online for 2 years. Now we're charging for it.
5 years later, we'll bring you folders again.
I get the vibe that they're they're moving in that direction. Just we're in that console that's doing it, you know?
Yeah, I think you're right. Actually, it's because the whole kind of missions and achievements stuff that they've added recently, along with the kind of Bluetooth stuff last year and the folder stuff this year, I think is actually a really good sign because it shows that they're actively kind of developing the platform still so far in. I mean, you wouldn't have got the same on the Wii U. I mean, it was dead in the water at this point. So it's a good sign, and it kind of ties into Furukawa's comments about it kind of being mid-cycle. So,
I mean, and to that point, right? Like, it's probably worth acknowledging the context of the fact that like the Switch is a console that was made by two Nintendos, right? Like the Switch was ideated and developed and like kind of midwifed by the old guard now, right? Like most of the people that were, you know, like that was like the last thing that like Iwata's leadership era pushed Nintendo towards. And then since then, right, like the Switch era has mostly been new blood, you know, like obviously we still have guys like Miyamoto kicking around and stuff like that, but you know, it is kind of a new.
You think Doug Bowser came in and was like, why can't I put these games in folders? Why can't I use my AirPods with my Switch in bed? And they're just like, sure, Mr. Bowser, we'll get that sorted right away.
Oh, it's just the thing where I think that there's this new blood in the company that is not going to be thinking about things in the way that the folks that built the Switch did. And the idea that to Chris's point, that some of the innovation that we're seeing now might point to where those folks' heads are at while developing the new hardware. It's potential, right? Like, I mean, it's potentially true that we could see a big leap forward with some of these things with the next generation of hardware, in the same way that like the Switch was a major step forward for Nintendo in a lot of ways, right? Like in terms of like build quality and form factor and like looking like, you know, a modern piece of technology and not a child's toy. And like they did take a lot of steps forward, even though they're still behind.
I think the biggest thing for the Switch really was the fact that they put all their eggs in one basket. I mean, for 30 years, they've had 2-3 pillars, you know, of different kind of console platforms to put stuff out on. So the fact that they went all in on one was kind of a bold, brave move for them. I mean, I remember when they announced the DS and they called it a third pillar because they were so unsure about it. They wanted to kind of keep the GBA propped up while they tested the water with this DS thing. So they have been kind of risk averse in that sense for the past 30 years.
I feel like they did that the same with the Switch, right? It was like, oh, the DS is still here. We had like directs all the time. It was just like Kirby's Extra Epic Yarn coming to 3DS. It's just like, are you kidding? Seriously?
Yes, it was like Samus Returns as well on the 3DS as well, and it was like, what are you doing? But I think that was just kind of the tail end of them kind of taking that.
It's like this is what we had in the pipeline,
And they did have that shift, they shifted early on too. Their development teams, they were like, all right, we're just gonna. Everybody's doing whatever, you know, for whatever it comes. So I don't know. They've been blending things for sure. And isn't the current president the youngest president they've ever had right now? I think I just looked it up. He's like 50 years old at the moment. Marketing guy is, I guess he was kind of touted as being kind of outside the video game sphere, and you know, I don't know. I think you're totally right. We're getting a bunch of like fresh ideas at Nintendo. I think they've been very aware that a lot of their developers have been aging out of it in some way, and I think it's nice. I think it's getting a lot of cool things moving forward, because one of the biggest challenges that I've heard, that just how culturally Nintendo works, is that like a lot of people up top, like, it kind of has to be a unanimous thing where they're all
Right.
on board. Because if there's somebody who's like, oh, I don't know about that idea, they respect that in a way that's like, oh, maybe we shouldn't go forward with this idea quite yet, you know? And I think that's been the aspect with online all this time. But now I think more of a shift happens internally, we're getting some of these ideas finally, and it's moving forward in some way.
I'd just be massively curious to see how it moves forward. I mean, as for what they do next, I don't know, because obviously with this platform and the success they've got with it, and the fact that they want to see it go on for another 4 or 5 years is really interesting. But at the same time, it's like you always expect Nintendo to be brave and bold and do something completely out of left field for whatever they want to do next. Unlike, I mean, the Wii U wasn't that, was it? But I don't know.
I think that's why it was
really
a failure,
hard,
right? Like, you look at what the Wii was, right? The Wii created a casual market that hadn't existed. It put consoles in nursing homes and schools, and like, you know, it was innovative regardless of how you felt about it. The Wii U was like, people really like tablets, huh? Let's do that. Let's make a tablet. You know, it's like it was clearly reactionary in a way that, you know, their big swings and their big hits have not been, right? Like, they invented the joystick. Right? Like, they made now the first modular console. You know, they invented new 3D technology to make the 3DS. Like, they usually are like always trying to figure out what's the new weird wacky thing that they can do, you know? And
was it the D-pad, not the joystick?
Well, both though, right? Because the N64 was the first like this kind of joystick, right? Like, obviously we had like the Atari kind of, you know, stick before that, but like the sticks as we know them originated on the N64.
I think you're muted, Steve.
You are.
I am, yeah.
Okay.
And they did the D-pad, and they did like VR before anyone with the Virtual Boy, even though it was terrible, but they did it.
We don't talk about
I've tried Virtual Boy, by the way, on the Quest, and it's not great. I can't imagine having that on like archaic hardware.
You've never played on an actual Virtual Boy? Because that's a fucking experience.
I bet.
I tried one at MagFest, and I was like, wow, they really sold this, huh?
Is it that bad? Like, what's it like? Is it?
It's just really hard. Face? Like, it's hard to use because it's like VR goggles on a camera
on a
stand. Yeah, and you gotta like crane your neck at this weird angle, and it's just hard to use comfortably. The whole like red,
kind of like when you go for an eye test and you gotta like prop your head
it's
up.
very much like that. Only you don't have like a chin rest, so you're just like
you're just holding your head there. Oh my god!
But like the graphics
didn't
bother me. Like the whole like the red thing is like not a problem, like, but I could definitely see how it would make someone sick as well, like in extended use. So shout out to the Virtual Boy. What are Virtual Boys games coming to the NSO?
They didn't do it with Labo VR. Like, what? That was an opportunity there.
They should have brought it back.
Yeah, it was actually.
Revive the branding.
Well, Labo's dead now, so that's never gonna happen.
Yeah. So talking on what Nintendo's going to do next, right? And like the future of the Switch. That was another section here, and some of the responses I thought were interesting. Like one of them was that the average response was that most people thought that there would be another 6 years of the console, bringing it into 2028, which seems crazy to me. Like, because
I can see it. I really can. I think I look at it as like Microsoft's approach, where you look at the software on the Xbox One and the Xbox Series consoles, basically the same. Most of the games are running cross-platform at this point. We're 2 years into the Xbox Series X at this point, and most of the games play on the old console. I could see them doing that, and then eventually saying, right, the original model doesn't work. These few games don't work on that, but the majority of them, I think, probably will. And it'll just be like, this only runs at 30 frames per second, or this only runs at like 400p on that console, whereas you can play it on the newer one with like a higher resolution and a higher frame rate. I could see them doing that for another 6 years.
By and large, I agree with that. I think 6 years is too long. I have a hard time thinking that this thing is still kicking, like actually a full like over a decade later. But like the whole 10-year life cycle that we've heard them talk about, I think is probably accurate. But in the way that we talked about the GBA and like the 3DS, where like there will be a crossover of at least 2 or so years where the Switch is still being quote unquote supported, but it's no longer the dominant console. But I think in terms of like the lifespan thing, the thing that I have the hardest time wrapping my head around, and you actually called this out in the survey, Chris, which is like how do they plan to future proof the console beyond what they've done? Because I mean, we talk about this all the time, right? Like we all love our Switches, we play them all the time, but I think especially if you own a quote unquote next gen, now current gen console, the Switch is showing its age. And I think especially in the last year or so is when I've started to notice it. And like, I feel like that could be a really glaring thing when like Breath of the Wild 2 comes out and you're like, like imagine how this would run if it was on a PlayStation or an Xbox, right? And like,
I think that's partially why maybe it's been delayed at this point. Is like maybe there's another console coming.
Yeah, but how many more years are they going to delay it? Right? Like it's like
I could see, I don't know. I could see them launching it with another console next March. You know, it would be 6 years, 7 years since the launch or whatever at that point. 6 years, and it'll just be like 6 years. Time for a refresh. If they call it the Switch Pro, Switch, even if they want to just call it a Switch, you know, at this point, I think they're kind of looking at it as the Switch is a commodity product in the same way that you see your mobile phone as one, that they want everyone to have one. Everyone's always going to have one. And every few years you upgrade it. And you maybe don't need to.
I really do too. And that's what I want at this point. I don't want them to make something that isn't a Switch, you know?
And it just keeps playing the same software, and then eventually they slowly fade them out, right? Because, like, you know, iPhones, you can get your update all the way back to like an iPhone 6, but if you got an iPhone 5, you're dead in the water. That's it. You know, it's time to move on. It's time to upgrade at that point, because it's been like 7 years since that phone came out. So upgrade, and that's I think what they'll eventually do. It's like, we're phasing this console out. You got to upgrade to the Switch 2 or Switch 3 or Switch 4, whatever they want to name them as. And I'd like to see that. I think they could do really well with just having that as a product, that every couple of years they got something new. They've been doing that, right? We had the Switch Lite, we've had the Switch OLED. I think eventually we'll get this like a Switch Pro, Switch 2, whatever it is, and they'll just keep doing that every couple of years with like a revised model.
Yeah, and the hope is if they maintain that model, obviously it kind of secures the whole kind of backwards compatibility question as well, which is something that obviously people are worried about.
Well, and again, I think it's a thing that like, and I know we let Nintendo get away with a lot of things that we don't let the other guys get away with, but like I can't swallow that one again, right? Like I really, especially with how much software people have bought on the Switch, it's like, there's no excuse.
35 games average, like that's a lot to lose if you can't play them again.
Yeah, and like I don't want to go through that again, right? Like if I bought a game on Switch, it should work on the next console. Period. The end.
Yeah,
you know.
Agreed. I have a lot of games now.
Co-signed.
Well, and you got to imagine that's part of why they're probably moving away from gimmicks too, where it's like, oh yeah, like that's kind of a pain in the ass, right? Where it's like DS games, 3DS games are hard to port to modern consoles. Wii games, to some extent, hard to port, you know? Like, granted, you've got, like, the Joy-Cons kind of close that gap a little bit now, which is great. But
even still, like, Galaxy was not a fun experience for me to play, because I wanted to play that handheld, and it just was just like, oh, I've got to move my thumb in the middle of the screen while I'm somehow moving to, like, try and catch all the little things.
And there's like mandatory shaking controls too. I've tried to play the game. I remember laying in bed one night, and then I just ran into the spot where it's just like those little stars that shoot you up, and you have to shake the controller to go. And then I'm just like trying to shake it so I don't disturb Jackie. And then like even the little amount I try, I turn over and she's glaring at me.
Just like,
and I'm just like,
I can't play this game.
I just can't play it.
I just checked mine. There's 180 games on it.
Oh my god!
Wow.
Wait a minute. Did I miss you turn around and grab your Switch off the shelf?
You did.
Okay.
You did, yeah.
Okay.
You
I was looking at Chewy while he was talking. Oh, no, you just leaned. Is it an optical illusion or do you have very long arms?
I've just got really long arms, yeah. Like Min.
Chris Brandrick, Mr. Fantastic.
That's it, man.
All right, so before we wrap things up and let you go here, Chris, of course, we can't talk about the future without talking about games, right? And the most anticipated games list, it's interesting because I think there's a couple games that you're like, yeah, of course these are the games. And then it's a bunch of stuff that already came out, right? I'm like, you guys are blowing the whole survey. Talk about stuff that's further out here, kids. So
I know.
Number one game.
bit annoying.
Unsurprisingly, number one game, Breath of the Wild 2. Number two game, Kirby and the Forgotten Land. Then we had Metroid Prime 4, Splatoon 3, and Triangle Strategy.
Yeah. Two of those games out,
but obviously front of mind at people when they were answering the survey, yeah.
Yeah, they're like, oh, I'm really excited for that game in a week.
Did we know the release date when the survey first went out for Kirby?
For Kirby, we would have by then, right?
So, yes.
Weird.
Like
Weird. I would not have put that down as the
survey.
most anticipated game then, I don't think, in a survey. It would have been further out. For me, it's like
hype cycle clearly works.
Yeah, I guess, right? Like, and there is that like recency bias where you're like, oh, of course I'm excited for this. It's imminent, right? It comes out in like 2 weeks. I'll know how I feel about it, you know? Like, whereas like at this point, I'm in a weird place with Breath of the Wild now where like it is, I think I would say my most anticipated Switch game. I'm pretty sure that's what I said in the survey. But also, it's like when it got delayed, I'm like, yeah, well, whatever. It wasn't coming out this year anyway, right? Like if they tell me next year, oh, it's delayed again, I'll be like, whatever. All right, fine. Like I want it, but I'm also at the point where it's like, well, put it out when it's done, right? Like I'm not. Yeah. I've been waiting 5 years already, right? Like I can wait another 2 or 3, whatever you need. You know,
yeah,
it's worth the wait the first time.
What is everyone's most anticipated game, though? Mine probably is, I think, Splatoon 3 for this year, because obviously Breath of the Wild's pushed back. I'm just over the moon hyped for Splatoon 3. I was when it was announced, all the new stuff they've revealed already. I can't wait to see all of the maps, all of the new weapons, the new, like, outfits. It's going to be so great. I can't wait.
For me, it's a bit of a tricky one, because I have no idea when it's going to come out now. It's Advance Wars.
Oh yeah,
me too.
Yeah.
I
mean, I get it completely, but
yeah,
I just
of
don't
course
know when that's going to happen now. So,
yeah, it's just like it feels like that series is cursed.
Yeah, totally.
But yeah, I was really looking forward to Advanced Wars, and that's certainly one that's high on my list. But I think the easy answer is Breath of the Wild 2, right? Because it's the sequel to the best game on the Switch, right? Of course. Yeah. It might be better than it. That's an extremely exciting prospect. But I think if you just remove that from it, I think I'm in the Splatoon 3 camp, because I feel like Splatoon has always been a franchise that I've kind of been like longingly looking over like the fence of like, oh, like when the first one came out, I was like, I want to play Splatoon, but I was very poor. And the internet in my apartment in college was like dial-up level bad. Like I could not play games online. So
you
it was
know
like,
what? So was the internet on the Wii U.
Exactly. So that combined to me not being able to play Splatoon. Like a friend bought it for me a few months after it had come out, and I was like, oh yes, and it didn't work. So I never really played the first one. Splatoon 2, I got into it kind of, but I didn't have friends to play with. It just wasn't regularly in my diet. Now, Splatoon 3, both of my co-hosts on the show obsessed with Splatoon, over 1,000 hours into it. I'm like, all right, I'm ready. I'm going to get it on the ground level. I'm going to be in the Splat Squad. I'm going to get into ranked. Like, let's do it. I'll commit this time, you know?
I hope so. I really hope so, because we're only able to play Turf War if we manage to match up with you at this point. It's just like, come on, Pete. Come on, Pete. Just get to that C rank.
I'm at 1,430 hours on Splatoon 2.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, that's the problem, right? Is like, you know, I'm like, okay, I'm like kind of a new player, and I'm trying, and they're both like, I get matched against Chewy because of the way Splatoon's matchmaking is dumb, and I'm playing with my friends, but it's gonna make me play against them, and then Chewy's just beating my head into the ground like a steak, and I'm just like,
Chewy
yeah,
does that with anyone. Like Chewy's pro gamer, like could be playing in tournaments but refuses to admit it, like X rank.
Well, that's the thing, and that's great, but I want to be on his team. I want to get carried to victory by my very good friend while I try to learn how to play the game, not have him beat the shit out of me and laugh.
Listen, I've tried, and honestly, my hours are on the low end with the people who play really well. So I don't know, it's tough.
Wow.
For me, definitely Zelda, but I think for this year, I still play a lot of Splatoon 2, if that wasn't obvious. So like Splatoon 3, yes, I'm excited, but I think I'm leaning more Mario Strikers Battle League right now. I am really pumped for that game. It looks fun. It looks like the online is doing something different than Nintendo's ever done, at least with like having that like 20-person league or I guess group that you have. So I don't know. I'm pumped for that one. I think it'll be something nice and fresh to change it up. And I don't know. I guess I think it's coming out before Splatoon 3, so I'll at least get a little bit of time on it before that takes over my life. But I don't know.
Yeah, that's like a summer release, I think, right?
Mm-hmm. I mean, they're both looking like summer at this point, so yeah. It could be that ARMS situation where I was like all in ARMS for a month, and then Splatoon 2 came out, and I never touched it again. So
Bye. Yeah.
Yeah, I was all in on ARMS, and then the community was like, okay, this game's over. And I was like, oh, okay. All right, oh well.
Yeah. ARMS fell off pretty damn quick, didn't it?
I love an ARMS, too. I loved that game. I thought it was a lot of fun. But, alas. All right, so, Chris, before we go, first of all, thank you for coming and joining us. This was a blast. We'll have to do it again before the next State of the Switch.
Yes, for sure. It's been a pleasure, man.
But yeah, please plug the stuff. Let people know where they can find the newsletter, how they can support you on Patreon, all that good stuff.
Great, yeah. So newsletter is over at switchweekly.com. You'd be joining like 9,000 other people and getting my newsletter every Sunday. Usually send it out like Sunday night. Be great if you could check that out. I'm on Twitter. It's at Chris Brandrick, and the Patreon is patreon.com/switchweekly.
Awesome.
That's my plug's done.
Yeah, make sure you go and show the support. Definitely go and subscribe, check it out, and make sure you're ready for the next State of the Switch so that you can be one of the thousands of people weighing in on this one. So, again, Chris, thank you for joining us. If you want to find us all around the web, you know where to go. It's flipscreen.games. That's our website. Find links to our Twitch, our Patreon, all that good stuff. Show your support however you choose to. Come be a part of the community. We'd love to have you. And for the whole Nintendo Noise crew, we'll see you next week.